Speaking of football, we'll chat some of that here with our next guest. That is Rolf Michaels, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. Rolf, how's it going today, man?
Going great. You guys are talking about the Derby. You know, when you get the calendar, the change of the year going to January, not counting March Madness, that of course doesn't count. Does any three sports that are usually not followed mean more to a betting fan? The Daytona 500, the Master, and the Kentucky Derby just all ooze springtime.
Yeah, right. And I can tell you, based on the winter forecast around here this weekend, I am dying for spring already, and we're barely halfway through the month of January. And I got to say, I'm sure you don't miss that either.
I don't. You know, I do have to say that it is raining today, and we actually lost electricity for a minute or two, so we've got our issues too. It's 60 degrees and raining, so everything is not sunny out here 365 days a year.
All right, let's get into the NFL here for the championship games this weekend. I know you and I really haven't talked too much NFL on the show, but I want to crowdsource opinions here as much as I can for the two championship games. So we start in the NFC. Saints, 3.5-point favorite, total 57 as they host the Los Angeles Rams.
You know, I just tweeted out that who would have thought at the beginning of the year that we would have four defenses that finished the regular season in scoring ranked 7, 14, 20, and 24. This year we finished with the top four scoring offenses in the NFL regular season. That's never happened before in the Super Bowl era, so certainly a different perspective this year. The Saints are undefeated at home in the playoffs. They're 7-0, but you have a Rams team that is 14-3 straight up. They've played 17 games on the road with their head coach, Sean McVay. They've won 14 of them, so clearly a great matchup for me. You know, I've gone back and forth on this game, and I look at obviously you have to look at the home road dichotomy, and the Rams are a team that, played well on the road. They were plus 50 yards per game, but the concern for me is I look at what they've done the last 4 weeks, and let's make it the last 8 or 10 weeks. They went to New Orleans, they lost. They went to Detroit, they only had a 24-yard edge in that 30-16 win. They went to Chicago. We saw them get outmanned. And then they had to win at Arizona. So coming down the stretch, having played Arizona, San Francisco, and Dallas, I think it's tough to get ramped back up and play the New Orleans Saints team that, at home, yes, only plus 43 yards per game. But, again, a team that down the stretch struggled without their left tackle. I do a radio show in New Orleans each week with Seth Dunlap, and he pointed out to me that the biggest part of their O-line had been missing those previous 3 weeks. They came back last week, and while they only put up 20 points, they had 25 first downs and had 420 yards against the Philadelphia team that we saw the defense was much improved. So, to me, I give the quarterback edge to Drew Brees and Jared Goff. I give the home edge, and I like the Saints in the Superdome.
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams down the stretch had a lot of concerns in the trenches. Teron Armstead, who you mentioned, missed. He was limited to 10 games this year, had a torn pec muscle. Andrus Peat had been hurt. Ryan Ramczyk had been hurt. Larry Warford had been banged up a little bit. And then on the Rams side, John Sullivan, Andrew Whitworth, Roger Saffold all missed time late in the year as well. So, you kind of wonder how those guys bounce back because they weren't playing consistently at the end of the regular season. And, even though the Saints did in large part dominate that game last week, they dominated time of possession. They clearly dominated in the second half. That offensive line played a lot. And the Rams, they ran the football a lot. So they were on the field quite a bit as well. That's something that's kind of interesting to me and maybe a factor not talked about a whole lot. I'm curious to see how these two teams bounce back on the offensive line.
Well, you talk about the Rams running the ball a lot. The Rams average 30 rushes per game. That includes the playoff games. The first 15 games of the year, they only went over 35 carries one time. Their last 3 games, 41 carries against Arizona, 42 rushes against San Francisco, 48 rushes against Dallas. So in their last 3 games, they had more rushes, 120, than 6, than their previous 6 or 7 games combined. Now, a lot of times you hear that the offensive line loves that. Let us control the game. Let us keep pounding them. We saw how Gurley and C.J. Anderson, C.J. Anderson with fresh legs looks like a monster in the Rams' backfield behind an O-line that's starting to block well. So, again, your 6.6 yards per carry at Arizona, you take that for what it is. It was Arizona. 3.7 yards against San Francisco. Yeah, you were at home in a game that you just had to win, and that's it. And then 5.7 yards against Dallas. But, again, a lot of that goes down with play action that worked early. Play action can help the run game. Play action can help the pass game. You run some play action, you open up the passing lanes, and all of a sudden your safeties have to start playing deeper, and then you start running the ball like they did. So, it's all going to come down to crowd noise. I don't think any place is going to be louder than the Superdome this weekend. And if you can't make those audibles and you can't change out of those plays or change into those play action passes, it's going to be a total different offense for Jared Goff. So, again, noise and crowd edge can play havoc on a young quarterback. And, Jared Goff is still a young quarterback being in this situation. Yes, he has 2 playoff games under his belt, a loss last year against Atlanta, a win this year against Dallas, but now he's making his first playoff appearance on the road.
All right, so let's go to the AFC Championship game here. Kansas City, 3-point favorite against New England. And, I think if New England's not as dominant last week as they were, this number's probably 3.5. I sort of feel like maybe there's some overreaction to what the Patriots did last week.
Boy, I can't agree with you more. If you have ever heard the words home road dichotomy, this is clearly the home road dichotomy playoff game. We are talking absolute polar opposites at home and on the road. At home, this Chiefs defense allows 17 points per game, 345 yards per game. On the road, that same defense allowing over double the points, 35 points per game, and 120 yards and 7 first downs more on the road. They allowed, 456 yards on the road, 29 first downs per game. Now you look at the opposite side with the Patriots. Again, no bigger home road dichotomy in all of football. At home, they were plus 117 yards per game going undefeated. On the road this year, minus 43 yards per game. That's a 160-yard per game difference. You look at what the Patriots did on the road this year, 5 losses. Not only 5 losses, but 20 points at Jacksonville, 10 points at Detroit, 10 points at Tennessee, 10 points at Pittsburgh. The only road game they lost that they scored over 20 points was the Miami game that they lost 34-33 on that fluky last play. But even there, they only had a 9 first down edge, putting New England on the road at the Chiefs. I'm a big Chiefs fan in this game. And how about this a stat for Tom Brady? Yes, we know Brady and Belichick in the playoffs. Well, for the most part, all of those playoff games were at home. Brady with a 46-18 ratio at home. His last 7 road playoff games, which encompasses multiple seasons, an 8-8 ratio for the stellar Tom Brady. You get him on the road, he's very, very human. Mahomes doesn't feel this pressure. He's as loose as it gets. I am on Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right. Well, you didn't leave us much more to talk about with that game. Very strong opinion and good evidence and rationale to back that up there. So let's transition over to the college basketball side of things a little bit. And, conference play and a very interesting result last night between Syracuse and Duke. But I wanted to check on a few different things here on today's segment. And let's start by looking at the best and worst teams against the spread here so far this season. And, look for some regression to the mean that we can probably prey on.
I tweeted this out last week that if I had a voter ready for Coach of the Year, there's no question it would go to Kermit Davis. Yes, he was at Middle Tennessee for 18 years, and yes, he knew the cupboard was bare after the run he made. But Middle Tennessee State this year, 2-13 against the spread. What does Kermit Davis does? He goes to Ole Miss. Ole Miss 14-1 against the spread. So he left a team that had a winning ATS record last year, is now 2-13 this year. He goes to Mississippi, and knocking off Auburn on the road is a big deal. Beating Auburn's an even bigger deal. Then he goes to Mississippi State in his last game and beats them. This Ole Miss team is legit. They're 14-1 against the spread. Oklahoma, I think we talked about last week. Oklahoma at 12-2-1. Last year, what happened? Well, last year, they were clearly a one-man team. Well, once you learn how to defend Trae Young and you saw their losing streak, they were very mediocre. Well, now they're a team. Lime Kruger has them playing as a team. They're number 8 in defensive efficiency, and they're 12-2-1 against this Virginia. Again, a team that you don't normally get, a team that was a number 1 seed last year, and they are a very good ATS team the next year. Usually you have people jumping on them. I don't know if it was the historic loss as a 1 seed to a 16 seed. I don't know if people don't like backing a Virginia team that only scores 50 or 60 points a game, but yet they still cover because their defense is the best in the country. Virginia 12-3 against the spread. And then couple high-profile teams that are mid-majors that continue to win and continue to cover. Buffalo 11-3-1 and Gonzaga 14-4. So again, those are teams that you would think after last year's win, Buffalo beating Arizona, Gonzaga doing what they do, that the public may have backed off of them and Vegas may have adjusted, but they just gotten better and they continue to beat the spread. Couple teams that you need to stay away from. We talked about Middle Tennessee State. Eastern Washington really struggling 3-12. Eastern Michigan 3-9. Much like Middle Tennessee, Northern Iowa is 3-12. And for those that follow the Missouri Valley and those that follow CUSA, well, you have those Northern Iowas and you have those Middle Tennessee State teams that for many years had dominated. When you get those programs in an off year and you get these teams that take out revenge on these, I understand why these teams are having bad ATS teams. All these teams are so tired of getting beat up by Middle Tennessee and Northern Iowa year after year after year. Now they're the better team. They can finally take it out on the team that bullied them for multiple seasons. And finally, Wyoming. Wyoming normally has a decent home edge. Highest elevation in all of sports, over 7,000 feet. But they're 3-13 against the spread. They're really struggling. So those are some of the tops and the bottom ATS's teams for the season year to date. Now, again, will there be regression? Absolutely. The world is on Mississippi now. Everyone knows about Mississippi and everyone knows about Oklahoma. But sometimes in those situations, people tend to bet against them. They think, Ole Miss is a fake team. Ole Miss can't be there. Ole Miss is a team that wasn't very good last year. They're improving. They're going to come back. So while you have a solid ATS team and you expect regression, don't bet that the regression will happen this week. If you've been playing them, you're on a streak, and the line is still where you think it should be, and you're going to play them. Play them confidently, and don't worry about it. If they start to lose a couple games because there is some regression or the ATS line starts to climb a little high, then you fade them. But again, until that streak stops, don't worry about how good or if you think a team has reached a ceiling. You can't assume they've reached their ceiling. Let them prove to you they've reached their ceiling by falling back down to earth and losing a couple against the spread.
Now, one of the things that we've talked about here in the past, both with college football and college basketball, the way that you have to separate the non-conference from the conference play part of the year, because, some teams play very good non-conference schedules in college basketball. Some teams play absolutely nobody and look to pad their records. It's the same thing in college football. Some teams will step up in class, others won't. So you have to put those statistics into the proper context. So I know that's something that you do with your database of stats and all the information that you have there. So I was kind of wondering if we could talk about maybe some teams that, have been pretty significant differences in efficiency between the non-conference portion of the season and the conference portion of the season. So are there some teams that, are just playing a lot better or playing a lot worse now that they're in conference play?
Well, couple teams that I'm going to look at. Number one, I'm sure everyone's familiar with Nevada now. They made their run last year. They lost to Loyola. They got everyone back. They got a 5-star. They got a pair of transfers. They're bet like they're going to be a Sweet 16. They're one of the top 10 as far as the future markets go. Well, in the non-conference schedule, they were number 13 in the country in offensive efficiency. Well, you get now into Mountain West play. Teams are familiar with you. Teams aren't worried about you being Nevada. Teams have played you year in and year out. And in the Mountain West, they're actually number 6 in the conference in offensive efficiency. So while they were 13th in the country, they're only 6th in the Mountain West. And you look at their last game, and, their last game was Fresno. They won by 10. They lost at New Mexico. And, yes, they beat San Jose by 40 points, but you got to realize San Jose is one of the worst 10 teams in all of Division I. So I'm going to look, again, they play at Boise, and then, they play a couple home games. But that Boise game I have circled that I think will be another very close game. On the opposite spectrum, I look at South Carolina, a team that we think of South Carolina, and I think most people think of defense. We know what they did last year. Well, this year they're not quite as good defensively, and offensively they're in the 144 range. Well, they tried changing up their lineup quite a bit, and right now they're actually 5th in the SEC. They're starting to play very well. They were switching between Trey Campbell and A.J. Lawson at point guard. Lawson moving over and being a little more shooting guard is giving them much more offense. Chris Silva starting to come around and give them some offense. So there's a team that, during the non-conference, they went through a stretch of Michigan, Virginia, Clemson, a lot of good defenses, and their offensive efficiency seemed to struggle, only scoring 78, 52, and 68 points. But again, you've played some of the top non-conference people. Now you're in conference play, it actually gets easier. And then, I don't want to be Mr. Obvious in this, but you have a team like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a top-tier 60 team in offensive efficiency. What happens? Well, you lose your point guard. Midway through the non-conference. Well, they're last in the SEC, and they probably will end up being last because they just don't have enough depth in that. So, anytime you have an injury like that, we'll see Duke fall down with a point guard injury, depending on how long that comes with him missing part of the game last night. So, injuries are going to be a big case as well. And then, lastly and obvious is like Clemson. Clemson is a team that I look at that is last in the ACC in offensive efficiency. And does that concern me with Clemson? Well, no, not really. If you've played 3 conference games and you played Duke, Syracuse, and Virginia, defenses that rank number 2, number 4, and number 13 in the country, of course your offense is going to be bad. So sometimes you just look at numbers and you have to say, well, nobody played a tougher 3-game slate than Duke, Syracuse, and Virginia in that stretch. Yes, their offense is going to struggle. Now let's see what comes out when they start playing a quote-unquote normal defense or someone that's not a top 40 defense in the country. So there's different situations with teams now getting in the conference play that know each other. There's teams that have some injuries or changed their lineups. And there's teams that just, played a very easy non-conference schedule and now are facing tougher competition.
Yeah, and there's one team I can isolate like that, and I mentioned them in a video pick over on YouTube last week when they played Tennessee State. I thought it was a big spot for Eastern Kentucky in the OVC because they played Austin Peay, they played Murray State, then they were taking a big step down in class against Tennessee State, and then on the weekend they had to play Belmont. So basically, they were playing the three best teams, I would say, in this conference. Maybe you put Jacksonville State up there. Thought that Tennessee State spot was good for the Colonels. They didn't get the cover, but the fact remains that it's still a good betting angle to look at where you may have played the creme de la creme of your conference. You are going to step back a little bit in class. So that is a betting angle you definitely want to keep in mind out there for the listeners that are trying to sort through the college basketball card.
Yeah, and Morehead State actually has played an even tougher schedule in that OVC. They're off Murray State, Austin Peay, Belmont, and Tennessee State. So, now you have a situation where you lost 3 of your last 4 games. You got to play Tennessee State. Now you're playing teams that are ranked in the 300 range, those Southeast Missouris, Tennessee Martins, Tennessee Tech. So I completely agree with you. When you get to the OVC, you have 4 teams, Murray State, Jacksonville State, Austin Peay, and Belmont, that are in the top 150 in the country. Then everyone else is 250 or higher. So when you have that big a disparity from top 4 teams to the rest of the league, you can really get some value when you're playing some of those weaker teams back-to-back-to-back games, then having to play the tougher schedule, or vice versa, playing those top 4 and bottom. But again, there is no disparity in college basketball like the OVC when you have 100-place split from top 4 to bottom 8.
All right, one thing I know you wanted to mention here, obviously we're in the throes of conference play for the most part, but there will be some teams that play non-conference games. I think there's one of those cross-conference challenges later this month. I want to say Big 12 and SEC maybe. And you've got some teams that play, close geographic opponents that aren't in conference, something like that. So you wanted to mention some numbers that you have here for non-conference games in the month of January.
I just thought I'd try to run something fun on the database and see if anything came up. Well, how would you expect non-conference home dogs, Adam, to be in January? Just off the top of your head. Positive or negative?
I would say pretty good. I would say maybe 60% range or so.
Yeah, it's that simple. Home dogs in January. Non-conference home dogs in January since 2014. So we've got a nice 5-year base. 32-18 against the spread, 64%. So, you're only going to see there's 50 games. You're only going to have 8 or 10 a season, but a 64% mark. Small home dogs, even better. If you're a small home dog between 0 and 4, you're 71.4%. 20 wins, 8 losses. Again, we only have 28 games in 4 seasons, but a very positive note. And home teams, this even goes a little further. So while we say home dogs, if you have home teams between the threes from +3 to -3, they are 25-14-1, 64%. So, a couple of those overlap those situations, but basically, if you like a non-conference team that's a small home favorite or a dog, it's been well over a 64% mark in that role. And then couple over-unders I looked at, when you have a home dog of 10 or more, that has rarely occurred, only 8 instances. The over-under is 1 in 7. So you have a home team that's outmatched by a non-conference foe, 1 in 7 over-under. But if you have a non-conference home favorite of 10 or more, they're actually 25-14 over-under, 64.1%. So again, a home dog, 8 situations, you're not going to play a total based on only 8 games in 4 years. But just some numbers for people to think of when you do get those January non-conference matchups, which we'll always see a handful every year.
One thing I do want to do a little bit here with our guests, I want to try to dig into some individual conferences as we go throughout these segments. And in the interest of time here, and since we talked about a couple of NFL games, we'll only look at one with you here, Rolf. But I want to try to do this here now that we're about 6 weeks away from conference tournaments, especially for some of the smaller conferences that start even earlier than that. Try to get some thoughts, some betting angles, some opinions on these teams here. Let's do the Mountain West, because you already mentioned Nevada, a team that's now 6th in the conference in offensive efficiency over the first 4 games. So they're really not performing up to their capabilities here. UNLV, Boise State, unblemished at 3-0. San Jose, one of the worst teams in college basketball this year. What about the middle? What about everybody else in this conference? What are you seeing from the MWC?
Well, my second best team, Nevada's in. Nevada's one of those rare teams that if they don't win the Mountain West, they're going to get an at-large bid. We talk about them every year. I don't think there were any last year. I think St. Mary's was the closest. Occasional a Missouri Valley team may get in that instance. But this year, they will be in unless they lose several players. So, they're the creme de la creme. They're the top teams. To me, the next level is clear, and there's only I'm going to put 3 teams in that group. It's Utah State, Fresno State, and Boise. Boise 3-0 right now, Fresno 3-1, Utah State 2-2 in conference play. But you look at Utah State 2-2 in conference play, they lost to Fresno State and Nevada. So you understand why they're 2-2. Those middle 3 teams are going to beat each other up. You have the interesting situations where, you do have Boise and Utah State. A lot of people play those teams. You can get some advantage playing the second of back-to-backs when you have those 2 good teams and you're playing them. Right now, Utah State and Fresno State rank in the top 80 or 70 or even 60 in both offense and defensive efficiencies. So, when you have Fresno State, Utah State, and Boise, those are the quality teams that I look to play at that can win a couple games on the road. I'll look to play them off a loss. Those top 4 teams I look at, and I'd say I don't have any problem. I think they're good enough. They have good enough coaching staffs. They've shown me the body of work this year. Right now we have Fresno State. They're off a loss to Nevada on Saturday, and they don't play this week midweek. So their next game is Boise State, where Boise State is off an easy San Jose State win. Boise State now is playing Nevada tonight, and then they have Fresno. So while the Fresno, this actually could be a situational play for Saturday. Fresno off a loss, not having to play this week, and then we'll be playing Boise, while Boise's playing this week at home against Nevada, a great spot to look at. When you look at the bottom teams, there's only one way for me to go with Wyoming and San Jose State right now. I can't see me playing on either team. It would have to be a very strong situation. There's not enough that I've looked at for either team that I can ever say I would play on you unless they were playing each other and I saw a favorable line. Air Force is a team that's a little better than San Jose State and Wyoming coming from the bottom up. Air Force, again, has that slowdown offense where, they have an adjusted tempo of 312. They're the slowest playing team in the Mountain West, one of the slowest playing in the country. So Air Force, I don't mind playing on if you get a situation where one of those top 4 teams is off a big win and now they're traveling to the road and they're having to lay double digits to a team that slows it down. Playing the Air Force offense, like the old Princeton, it's tough on a defense. It's very mental. You have to keep running. You have to keep chasing guys. And if you're a double-digit favorite on the road, playing in that altitude off a big win, that is a situation I look to play on. San Diego State is a team that has surprised me. I thought they would be better than they were this year. And New Mexico is a team that made some big switches. They just beat Nevada last week. Then the next game they got blown out. They lose to UNLV, and then they get blown out against Colorado State. So Paul Weir is a coach that 5 games ago, Paul Weir is a team that would always play press man-to-man. Well, during the Christmas break, he says, we're changing. We're going to a zone. And he's done that the last 3 or 4 games. Well, it caught a couple teams by surprise, including Air Force and Nevada going to the zone. But we saw UNLV busted and Colorado State busted because, hey, if you've played man-to-man for 3 straight years with all your players and all of a sudden you think you can learn zone defense over the Christmas break, it's not going to work. We see Syracuse struggle with the zone the first month of the year, and they play it 365 days, 24 hours a day with the coach who coaches the best zone in the history of basketball. So, people that make those midseason changes, you have to make your adjustments. So, top to bottom, if I had to pick a second-best team, it would be Utah State, Fresno State right behind them. That, of course, after Nevada. And then in the middle, UNLV's playing up and down. It's been hard for me to know what to make of UNLV. I watched their games here. They lost one of their top players, Jakur Justin, after 8 games. Thought they would fold a little bit, and what do? Well, you beat 3 weak teams. Again, you got to remember, when you're looking at the schedule, we talked about the worst teams in the league. We talked about Colorado State. We talked about Wyoming. We talked about New Mexico. Those are their wins. Then they're going to play Air Force, San Jose, and New Mexico again. You could be 6-0 and be the most overrated 6-0 team in any conference in the entire country. And then what do? Then they're going to play Nevada, Utah State, Boise State, Fresno State. You're in for the gauntlet. So we'll keep an eye on UNLV, bring them up in a few weeks from now from top to bottom. But, it's sad to say, but right now, the Mountain West and the Pac-12 to me are almost even. I give the Pac-12 a little bit of an edge because their bottom teams are clearly better than Wyoming and San Jose State. But Nevada would be the best team in the Mountain West right now, and Utah State wouldn't be very far behind number 2 in the Pac-12. So some quality basketball, a little top-heavy, and while you only have 4 teams that I can count on every night, a decent conference to follow because you get some altitude changes and unique scheduling spots.
Well, on next week's show, we'll talk about the Atlantic 10 and kind of give some thoughts into that conference. But, Rolf, before I let you go here, you mentioned a possible situational play coming up this weekend. You got one for tonight or tomorrow to pass along to our listeners?
I do. Let's talk about a technical and a situational. The technical is going to be game 637, 638. It's going to be a totals play on over. It's Georgetown and Marquette. Georgetown right now, number 15 in tempo. They're 23-6 over under their last 29 games. They're 14-3 over under at home. And you have a Marquette team that actually has played faster in the past. If you look at the tempo, they're number 92. They've slowed some things down at home, tried to play a little better defense. But when they get on the road, they do want to run the ball. They're 11-2 over under on the road. So the technical play is tonight, Georgetown and Marquette over the total. Situational play for tonight is going to be game 630, Northern Illinois minus the 5.5 against Central Michigan. You look at records and you may say Northern Illinois is 10-6 and Central Michigan is 13-3, but let's look at the strength of schedule. Remember, 353 teams in Division I basketball. Central Michigan has played the number 343 schedule, so no faker record than that 13-3 Chippewas mark. Northern Illinois, 10-6 this year with the number 164 schedule. Central likes to play fast. Northern likes to play slow. That favors, to me, the better team at home to control the pace. Northern Illinois, number 1 in the MAC in scoring defense and three-point defense. And then if you get to be a close game, they're also number 1 in free throw percentage. They make their free throws, which you want when you have a defensive team or a team that likes to slow the pace. And then they add in double revenge last year. I'd like to preface it by saying when you talk revenge, to me, revenge only means you had a chance or you should have won the game and lost. if you're a double-digit dog twice and you lost twice, to me that's not double revenge. You were expected to lose twice, you lost twice. Well, Northern Illinois was pick 'em at home last year and a 5-point road team at Central Michigan, a game they had at the lead, I believe, and lost. So 2 games they were in, could have won, lost both of those games. So, again, they do get a mark for double revenge for me from last year. So, over Georgetown Marquette and game 6:30, Northern Illinois.
Rolf Michaels, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. What's going on over there right now, man?
You know, just kicking away the season. My power ratings go up today some more. I'll keep adding to the basketball guide. I'm piecemealing it. By next week, we'll have a guide out every Monday. Right now, I'm just putting up bits of information as the week progresses, getting it into the guide format that I can have. And again, I say it every week. While, you know, I'm not a huge NBA fan, the NBA stat sheet with the free play I put up there gives you some great value in the NBA. Be able to check that out at a glance. That's all free, wagertalk.com.
And you can follow Rolf on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Rolf Michaels, appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Adam.